Chris Klodnicki is well known as Sloppy Claude online. He has won numerous $100 rebuy events, 2 nightly 100 grands, and one 1K Monday. He has almost $600,000 in Online Player of the Year qualified cashes alone. He recently made that much in just one tournament when he finished in 12th place in the World Series Main Event. He was heartbreakingly close to the final table and 4 months of what is expected to be excellent media buzz. Nevertheless, he made it through more than 6,800 other players in the year's biggest tournament, and we've got him in the studio today to talk about how he achieved that accomplishment. We're also going to see if we can get him to give his opinion on the so-called November 9. All right, so thank you very much for being with us today, Chris.
No problem.
And so, first off, the most obvious question is, what got you that far in the main event?
I'd say the most obvious thing is I just avoided getting coolered and getting bad beated. But I mean, I played really well, I thought. And yeah, I avoided coolers and bad beats. That's the main thing for getting far.
Well, so by avoiding it, coolers and bad beats, you're basically saying you didn't get unlucky, which
exactly
kind of meant that you were lucky to have not gotten unlucky.
Exactly. I didn't suck out at all, but avoiding bad beats and coolers is just as good, you know?
Yeah. Well, I'm sure that some people would take exception to the fact that you never sucked out.
Yeah. I mean, it's
not
7 days without sucking out. Trust me, I remember, you know?
Well, I mean, when you ask anyone who's done well in a tournament how they got so far, a lot of them are going to say, I got lucky to have gotten that far. You know, a lot of luck factored into it. And with an event like this, with 6,800 entrants, and you know, it runs over 7 days, and it's so deep stacked, 7 days so far, I should say.
Right.
Luck has to come into play. So, I mean,
huge factor.
Is luck a bigger factor in this kind of event than it is in any normal event?
Actually, I'd say it's less of a factor in this event, just because it's so much more deep stacked. There's a lot more play, a lot more post-flop play, rather than most other tournaments, smaller buy-ins, like the 1500s, 2000s. Luck's a huge factor for them, because there's a lot of just pre-flop all-ins. There's a lot less in the main event. I could probably count on 2 hands how many times I was... Actually, 1 hand, how many times I was all in pre-flop.
Okay. And so, and by not getting all in pre-flop, that basically means that even if you make a mistake or even if you get sucked out on, you have the chance to regain some chips and kind of negate that.
Chance to chip up, chance to outplay people. And, I mean, that's the way I picked up most of my chips was post-flop play.
Well, you talk to a lot of big-name pros, and they'll say the reason you aren't seeing a lot of big-name pros at the final table nowadays is because there's so much more of a luck factor in this because there's so many entrants and it becomes kind of a crapshoot. So you're kind of taking exception to that a little bit?
I don't think that's really the reason. I think the reason why there's not big-name pros is because the percentage of big-name pros in the field is so small because there's 7,000 entrants. Like, how many big-name pros is there? Probably less than 100. So, I mean, the chance of them going through a field of 7,000 or whatever is not very good, you know?
Mm-hmm. Well, so given the fact that you agree that there is a very, very decent amount of skill just because of how deep stacked it is and how slow the blind structure is, it would stand to reason that the 9 finalists are pretty decent players. I mean, to have outlasted this huge field in a relatively deep stacked tournament. What are your thoughts on the finalists?
I think they're, for the most part, very good players. I've played with a bunch of them for several days, and I think the final table is one of the most talented ever.
Okay. And there have been a lot of media outlets that have said basically the only recognizable name left in the field is David Chino Ream. Mm-hmm. Do you agree with that, or do you think that some other people are maybe given less credit than they deserve?
Well, I would say he's the only one recognizable to the public, even though he's not even that big of a name. But, I mean, I think he's a great player, and he's the only one that's had some big results. Actually, Montgomery did final table, the LAPC, I believe. But other than that, I don't think anybody's had any big scores. But that doesn't mean they're not good players, because they definitely are.
Would you have any opinions on any of them as individuals? Like, who do you think has the best chance? Who do you think? Well, you probably aren't going to say who you think is probably going to drop out the soonest. But
well, I think Kim's going to drop out the soonest just because of his chip stack. I mean, that has nothing to do with how good he is.
He has about
I think
2 million?
He's a great player. I think he had 2.9 or 2.5, something like that. But yeah, he's super short stacked compared to the rest of the players. But I mean, he grinded his way to the final table. He deserves to be there.
And did you have any opinion on who you think is going to go the furthest with their stack?
You know, I don't know the chip counts offhand. Out of talent, I liked Peter Eastgate's play. I think he's really aggressive, And he was the one player that I was actually a little scared to play against. But there's a lot of good players. Chino's great. He's unpredictable. And I know he's a little short on chips, though. Took a terrible beat. Let's see, who else? Got the chip leader, Dennis Phillips. I mean, he's got the chip lead, so he's got a good shot at it.
Usually that puts you at a shoe-in.
Yeah, that helps.
If you can hold it at least.
But yeah, I like Gino. I like Eastgate. And, Marquis. Marquis is definitely a good player. I know he's also short on chips, though. But I like his chances if he can double up or just chip up early.
Okay. Well, it's obviously most poker players' dream to get deep in the main event, the biggest poker tournament of the year, and you've done that successfully. So
somewhat successful.
Didn't make the final table. You got deep at least. You didn't make the final table.
Pretty deep.
But what was going through your head as you were sitting there day after day, seeing people drop out, and you were still kicking? I mean,
a lot of people just blew up, to be honest. I avoided blowing up. I kept my composure, which was one of the reasons I lasted so long. I don't know how, because I've blown up in tons of tournaments before. Not this one, though. Yeah, it was such a grind, 7 days. It's really tough to keep composure for that long. And, I mean, the guys at the final table did really well at that.
So what did you do to keep your composure, though? Like, how did you stay focused and stay on the ball?
I don't know. I really didn't think about it much. I just did the same routine every day. I didn't really let the cameras or anything bother me too much. I just focused on winning the tournament. I didn't think about the money. I didn't think about anything. I just was playing like it's any other tournament, and I was playing for first place. Maybe got a little too aggressive, but...
Well, no, let's talk about that, actually. Going into the final day, you were, I think, 9th in chips out of the 27 remaining players. Was it something that went wrong, or was it just kind of bad luck, or what happened that day? And what was your plan going into that day?
Well, I didn't really have a plan for the day. I just play like I do any other tournament. Just playing to win. I wasn't playing just to grind to the final table. I lost some pots early. I did a bad 3-bet with I squeezed with pocket nines when I should have known that the flatter was a trapping type player, and he came back over the top of me, and right there I knew he had a monster. He asked me to flip over one card. It was an ace. I can guarantee 8 pocket aces, and it was a super tight player. So that was an easy fold for me, but I could have just flatted there. Maybe flopped the set and doubled up, because I'm going to get paid off if I hit a set there. So I chipped down immediately to about 4 million. I started with like 6.2, I think, but then I doubled up. I made a big call for my tournament of life with pocket nines against Ace King and held. So that's lucky right there. And then after that, I just really didn't pick up many spots to accumulate chips. I wasn't picking up many hands. I wasn't really getting paid off too much. I was kind of just lingering around, and I lost a big pot before dinner break. That one might get on TV where I min raised with my ace king. I thought I played it perfectly, but I guess not.
So you were a PokerStars qualifier, were you not?
Yeah, I was.
So what was the qualifier that got you into the main event?
I actually won a bunch of seats. I won a 30 rebuy, I won a step 6, and I won a 200 double shootout turbo. So, and then I won on full tilt too, but I went with stars. And
so what was the easiest way to earn your seat? What is the easiest way for people who are thinking about trying to qualify online next year?
The easiest way, whatever you're good at. There's so many different games. You could do the double shootouts. You could do the multi-tables or the sit and goes, steps. Whatever your best game is. But is there a certain type of qualifier where the fields in general seem less likely to do well? Well, the 30 rebuy was pretty soft. But there's only one seed for that. That's the tough part about it. The steps aren't a bad route, but the only problem is there's a lot of regulars at the step 6. But there's always some bad players there. So I'd say there's always some bad players. Winning a seat's not as tough as it sounds. Well, and
you bring up a good point that a lot of these people are grinding through all the steps, and they finally get to step 6, and now the table's full of sharks, basically waiting to get the people who are scared money, basically.
Exactly. Well, it matters what time you play at, too. Sometimes, I mean, I know a bunch of the regulars, like, they have their certain routine where they play, like, just 12 hours straight, so when they're done, there's still some going off, and that's when you want to play them.
Well, what advice could you give to what I'm sure is a huge percentage of the viewers who want to do well in next year's main event?
What advice could I give? Let's see. The main thing is just to take it one day at a time, and you really got to be able to try to play to win, I think. You can't really play like scared, just trying to grind up to the next pay jumps, because it's so exploitable. Players, like the good players, will be really aggressive, and that's how I accumulate a lot of chips, just by going after the more passive players.
Okay. Well, and you said you've always got to play to win. Obviously, that's good advice pretty much any time, but people may misinterpret that on day one and try to win on day one. Basically, you know what I'm saying? Like they'll try to take any weakness they can see and exploit it, and maybe they're kind of running themselves into the ground. Do you have any advice to try to temper yourself to not do that?
Day one play, I mean, you can actually, day one's probably correct to pass up some plus EV spots if it's a high variance situation, just because you're going to have so many plus EV spots in this tournament, because it's a really weak field. Probably the weakest field definitely the weakest field of any main event of the year. So you're going to want to you're going to want to play small ball, just slowly chipping up. That's how I played this tournament, and it seemed to work out. I tried to avoid big confrontations with martial hands. I tried to save that from my big hands, the big confrontations.
Okay. Now, we've been talking a lot about the main event. It's obviously the biggest event of the year, but you also did really well in a Razz event at this World Series. You got heads up.
That was a lot of fun.
You got heads up with Barry Greenstein. Why was it a lot of fun? Just because it's Razz and it's kind of an interesting variant?
Yeah, because I don't play Razz too often. I don't think anybody does.
Exactly.
I mean, I really like Razz. I seem to, when I play horse, I'll play some horse tournaments every once in a while, mostly just to, like, switch it up, you know. I don't consider myself an expert at any of the games. I do consider myself good at Razz, though. That seems to be my best game out of the mixed games. And I was actually really looking forward to that this year. I told everybody that would be my best chance at winning a bracelet.
And then it was.
And, yeah, I ended up getting heads up with who else but Barry Greenstein. Like, I couldn't have an easier opponent, you know? He doesn't make any mistakes.
Especially for a game like Razz.
Yeah. I mean, he didn't make any mistakes.
Even though he didn't make any mistakes, according to you, it was a long heads up.
Yeah.
So you definitely held your own.
I was grinding, you know. I mean, heads up Razz is pretty simple, actually. A lot of times it's just basic, easy decision. Yeah, ABC decisions. But yeah, there's also a lot of luck involved in Razz. I definitely ran good in that tournament.
Well, that's actually what I was going to ask. You say you're good at Razz, but there's a lot of people that contest that Razz is one of the most luck-based variants of poker. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would, actually.
So, but you do believe that you could still definitely have an edge. Where do you get the edge in Razz?
Well, people make all kinds of mistakes, like raising with a hand that's obviously not the best possible hand, and people make some bad mistakes. And a lot of people play way too many hands on 3rd Street. And also, people don't pay attention to the exposed cards, which is a very important part of the game. If you got to really pay attention to the exposed cards, because sometimes you'll have to fold a hand like Ace-2 Stray, even though it's considered the best hand. Like, if all your outs cards are out, if the 4s and the 5s and the 6s are gone, if they're exposed, then that hand turns into almost trash, you know?
Well, a lot of people are almost daunted by stud type games just because you have to pay attention to all those exposed cards. Right. Is it really as hard as people kind of think in the back of their mind, or is there an easy way to kind of see and remember all of that?
I mean, I don't have a great memory. You just gotta have an idea of the cards that are out. I don't think you have to memorize each individual one. Mostly the low cards is all that matters. And I look at my cards first before every hand, and then I look at the exposed cards and see which ones match up, and then decide whether my hand's playable.
Okay. Well, what is the biggest consideration that people have to make when coming from the online poker realm to the live poker realm?
I don't think it's that much different. The only difference is, well, for a tournament like the main event and all main events in general, $10,000 buy-ins, they're deep stacked. And the online tournaments, most of them are not deep stacked. I mean, you'll only get a couple tournaments, maybe like the W Coupe will be deep stacked, and the F-Tops main events kind of deep stacked. But the live deep stack poker is so much different. There's so much more post-flop play that you just don't see online, except in the early stages of tournaments. You have to play that. You have to play post-flop the entire tournament for the main event, and that's one of the things that I liked about it. Because when you're playing post-flop, when you're playing deep stacked, there's a lot more situations where you can exploit weaker players.
Okay.
Rather than the online, which is mostly pre-flop game, like say the 100 rebuy, it's just pretty much all pre-flop later in the game.
You're saying that online poker is a lot more pre-flop based, and so since it's always getting in pre-flop a lot more often, and you have to see all the cards, you'd think that it'd be more luck-based online.
Yeah, it's definitely more luck-based, but there's also a skill factor involved in online poker. Like playing pre-flop is a skill in itself. It's because you're going to have to know when the right time is to make your pushes and when to make big laydowns. It's a lot more of a guessing game online, though. A lot more of a guessing game, and yeah, it is more luck.
So you say it's a lot more of a guessing game. Does that mean you really do put a lot of credibility to live reads then? Is that what you're getting at? Like physical tells?
I don't really rely on physical tells too much, more betting patterns. But
Okay.
you get more information live because there's more betting. There's more streets. You play more streets than just pre-flop. Online these days, it's like a game of chicken almost because people are 3-betting with air, people are 4-betting with air. It's getting like a guessing game, but there's still definitely a lot of skill involved.
Okay. Well, the final question I have for you is, was there a pivotal thing that you did or that happened to you in your poker career that just really improved your game?
I wouldn't say one thing in particular. I mean, I've just been playing a lot more since I graduated college a little over a year ago. I've been playing full-time. I started playing a little more live. I think my breakthrough was probably at PCA. I thought I played really well there. I made a real deep run. Kind of got involved in maybe some pots that I shouldn't have. And I definitely had a really good shot at final tabling that, but blew a lot of chips on one of the later days.
Well, were there any like poker philosophies or poker strategies that kind of came to you that really just blew your mind and changed your game?
No, I don't think so. I
Not
mean,
really?
Just playing a lot and just thinking over my hands after I play them, talking with some friends about hands. That always helps a lot.
Okay. Well, that's all the questions I got. I really appreciate you doing this interview.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
And thank you guys for watching The Online Zone on Card Player TV.